I learned a lot from the service industry, and I came to recognize that facilities management really is a service industry. So, and I told you before, kind of as a joke, I like to tell people that you need to learn how to say, "Do you want fries with that?" Because you're the same, it's the same idea, right? You need to anticipate your customers' needs. You need to kind of sell them on what they should be having, what's going to make their life better. Not necessarily fries are going to make our lives any better, but with facilities, you want to go in, you want to ask people how they're doing, you want to ask how they're using the facility, you want to find out if it's meeting their needs. To say that you provide a nice, clean, warm environment is great, but sometimes people have different needs from the facility. Some people may like to work late. Some people like to work early, and you may set up a energy savings program that turns all the lights off and reduces the heating, at 4 o'clock, and you've got half your staff wanting to work till 6 o'clock, right?
Mm.
So you got to find out what their needs are and try and meet those needs.
This is Facility Rockstars, the podcast that celebrates the unsung heroes of our daily lives, facility professionals. I'm your host, Jay Culbert. Join me as we honor these great leaders, sharing stories, insights, and expertise that empower us all to learn and grow together. Facility Rockstars is sponsored by Coludus, operating the way you operate in order to make your life easier.
Welcome back to Facility Rockstars. I'm your host, Jay Culbert, and I'm thrilled to introduce you to today's guest. He's a highly dedicated leader who has demonstrated exceptional success in demanding academic and research environments. Throughout his career, he's overseen all levels of facilities, excelling in financial planning and budgeting, project management, life safety, energy management, and human resources management. His deep expertise and strategic vision have allowed him to thrive in managing complex and multifaceted operations. He is an invaluable resource, bringing a wealth of knowledge and a proven track record of leadership in environments that require both precision and innovation. He is the Director of Facilities Planning and Management at Harvard Art Museums. John Boucher, welcome to the show.
Hey, Jay, thank you. I really appreciate the invitation to come on and speak.
Absolutely. Thrilled to have you here, and thanks for investing your time with us today, John.
Great.
So, if you've heard the show or seen the show, you'll know that you'll be able to predict my question, and that question is, sir, with all of your experience and everything you've learned throughout the years, what's been your biggest lesson learned?
Well, Jay, probably the biggest lesson I learned was very early on in my career was that you need to answer people, you need to respond. So every time I get an email, a phone call, someone comes up with a question, I try to give them an answer. And the answer doesn't have to be correct or doesn't have to be the right answer for the time. It doesn't have to solve the problem, but you have to let them know that you've heard them, you understand their problem, and that you're willing to take the time to find out more and to get them the right answer.
I love that answer because I've done it myself, and I've seen others do it throughout my career where we will wait to try to get the right answer or more information, and we're leaving the other party hanging. So have you seen that as well?
Yeah, it was something that came from my own experiences as a customer, so to speak. When I would reach out to someone looking for some information, or if I had a concern, and then you didn't hear back from them for, was it a day, was it an hour, was it a week? It really depended on the situation. It, in your mind, could have been imperative. And then when I started getting into facilities management and I was meeting with customers and I was responding to them in the way I wanted to be responded to, I got a lot of positive feedback. A lot of the customer complaints started to reduce just by having good communication between myself and them.
That's very telling. That's very telling. I like the words you used. They feel heard. I mean, you're acknowledging that there's an inquiry, basically.
Absolutely.
Another question about this. So, couple actually. So I'm sure you've seen colleagues or some of your team members not do this at times. So how would you recommend, I don't know, guiding or coaching those people to be more reactive, no, more responsive, I guess is the right word.
Yeah, just real basic. Just when you receive an email from a colleague or a customer, and they ask something and you may not have an answer, just a quick response to acknowledge their email, acknowledge their phone call, and say, "Hey, I don't really have a great answer for you right now, but I'm going to look into it, and I promise to get back to you within a day or whatever it may be." And then follow up, set your calendar. I use my calendar.
Mm.
A lot of people set their calendar for, the meeting they have with so and so. I use my calendar a lot just to tell myself to return phone calls, to connect with someone, to follow up. They're just little appointments for myself.
That's smart. I like that. Never thought of doing that. Um, I'll just add this too, John, on this because it's this is a big deal to me because I believe in being very responsive, and that doesn't mean you have the answer. Just to fall back on what you said in the beginning too, I've found that the fact finders of the world, the people that need a lot of information before they make a decision, tend to be in the camp of responding slower for that reason too. So it's, I guess, there's some psychology there too, or maybe personality styles that
Yeah.
may drive this or drive away from it.
Another big mistake you can make, right on the same line, I've run into people that have very strict email answering hours.
Mm.
Sometimes they may restrict themselves to a few hours a day. Sometimes they may restrict themselves to 1 day a week. We only respond to X on Wednesdays. I really don't like that. I don't think you should be tied to your computer and your email. I mean, you have a lot to do each day, a lot of meetings and planning. But when you do sit down and you do see something, I think it's imperative that you respond as quickly as you can, especially when you do have the answer. Sometimes, if you're going to only respond every Wednesday, well, if it's Monday and you actually know the answer and it take you 2 minutes, just go right ahead and let them know what they need to know.
And it's off both of your desks.
Correct.
Yeah, they're engaged in it. Give them the answer if you have it.
Yep,
Yeah,
absolutely.
great stuff. I wanted to now talk about PM programs with you, John, because we've touched on this together in the past, and I think it's almost universal to our audience and to the FM world in general. Can you just walk us through some PM programs or best practices that you've had over the years?
Yeah, I really like the idea of setting up a PM program. So taking a piece of equipment and putting it on a schedule for service, lubrication, inspection, whatever it may be, depending on the equipment. Um, and what I like to do with that is most people have a computerized maintenance management system, a work order system, where you can track when you do PM service on a piece of equipment and when you do CM or corrective maintenance on a piece of equipment. And for me, the best data you can get is looking at those numbers. So how many PMs did I perform over a period of time? And then what corrective maintenance did I generate? So if I'm always going out and I'm never finding anything wrong, well, most likely it's not that the equipment's in perfect condition. Either you're not doing the PM correctly, or you're missing something. At the same time, corrective maintenance work orders can also be customer generated. They can come from breakdown. So you want to compare how much corrective maintenance is coming from the preventative maintenance and how much is coming from outside of your team. In other words, the customers and the equipment breaking down. And you really should find that the majority of your corrective maintenance comes from your own team, from your preventative maintenance. And in that way, you're being proactive, you're solving problems before they impact your customers.
I want to jump back on a couple of points you made. Actually, the last one, is there a percentage that you'd say would be ideal or at least most common or a target for you of your outbound versus your inbound?
Yeah, I would like to see about 75% of corrective maintenance coming from preventative maintenance.
Mhm.
Inspected the equipment, found a worn belt, replaced the worn belt. inspected the equipment, found, lubrication was low, the oil was down, something like that. Noticed the battery was out of date, changed the battery. So that's great because again, the customer doesn't know those things. They don't realize those things, but when the belt breaks, and the fan stops working, and then you get a call because the room's too hot because there's no ventilation, uh, you know, that's a big impact. Again, you can't get everything. Things do break, but you really want to try and catch as much as you can.
How do you build a good program, John? And how do you train up your staff on how to stay ahead of it? And you mentioned that's the other thing I want to jump back to was if it's not being done properly, how do you train that? How do you catch it if it's not being done? All of that.
Well, yeah, I mean, you'll definitely see if you're spending a lot of time on preventative maintenance, man hours, and you're not generating any corrective maintenance at the same time, that same piece of equipment or the same type of equipment throughout your portfolio is generating a lot of customer generated corrective maintenance. You obviously have not trained your staff to perform the maintenance the right way. So you can pull that task out. That task may be, inspecting belts. So what to look for, maybe you need to have a new training session on looking at, belts and motors, and how to spot, the fraying or the wear and that kind of stuff.
Excellent. Excellent. You touched on, well, I wrote down the word proactive and really solving things ahead of your customer bringing it to you. Could you say a bit more about that? Because I like it from a customer service perspective. Yeah, what's been your experience and some best practices on how to always be implementing it that way?
I mean, when I say proactive, I'm really talking about the PM program itself.
Mhm. Yep.
So basically taking all your assets, breaking them down, using industry standards on what each piece of equipment requires. In some cases, it's driven by codes and standards. If you look at fire alarm and life safety, emergency lighting, you have a lot of standardized inspection testing periods. So that's one way of setting up that PM program. And the other way is just looking at the equipment and how often your own experience, how often does it seem to break, and trying to get something in ahead of time.
I would imagine your customers are much happier when you're ahead of it.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
They don't want to call you.
Right. Right. Well, and you can plan your day better too because you're not reacting to things, right?
Absolutely.
As much. So just the foundation again, 75% would be kind of the ideal goal number of outbound versus inbound is what you're saying, right?
Correct.
Got it. Anything else on the PM program topic at all that others could learn, John?
I just think a good PM program, it not only helps your technicians, they become more familiar with the equipment. Not only are you catching problems, but in an emergency, everyone now knows where the equipment is, right? If you're only doing breakdown maintenance and you're not in a mechanical room or an electrical room or wherever you have the equipment, if you're not in there routinely, you may not know where they are. You may not know where shutoffs are. You may not know where safeties are. And it helps you to then better understand the equipment. And when something does go wrong, maybe you have a water leak or an electrical power outage or something to that effect. When your people respond to that mechanical room, they know where things are, and it really helps to solve a crisis.
Excellent advice. Excellent. Another topic you and I touched on in the past was FM is facilities management is truly a service industry. And I don't remember how you said it. Forgive me if the words are wrong here, but really it's their house, not ours, right? It's our customer's house, not ours. And we're here to service them. So could you expand on what you meant by that, John?
Yeah, I think in my own experience, I've met facilities managers who really kind of looked at it as almost a fiefdom. It was their building, right? They own it, they ran it. The people inside were a kind of necessary nuisance, and they were gonna, do what they wanted to do, and everyone else be damned. And I really didn't look at it that way. And I took a lot of classes in project management and business, and I learned a lot from the service industry, and I came to recognize that facilities management really is a service industry. So, and I told you before, kind of as a joke, I like to tell people that you need to learn how to say, "Do you want fries with that?" Because you're the same, it's the same idea, right? You need to anticipate your customers' needs. You need to kind of sell them on what they should be having, what's going to make their life better. Not necessarily fries are going to make our lives any better, but with facilities, you want to go in, you want to ask people how they're doing, you want to ask how they're using the facility, you want to find out if it's meeting their needs. To say that you provide a nice, clean, warm environment is great, but sometimes people have different needs from the facility. Some people may like to work late. Some people like to work early, and you may set up a energy savings program that turns all the lights off and reduces the heating, at 4 o'clock, and you've got half your staff wanting to work till 6 o'clock, right?
Mm.
So you got to find out what their needs are and try and meet those needs.
So I great advice, and I want to ask you how you did this, and the reason for the question, John, is how do you make it consistent versus episodic? And I guess my question is, do you build a module? Is there a questionnaire? Is there some place to capture all of this data if someone's not used to doing it?
Yeah, in fact, recently we just did a facilities use study. We actually went around. We hired someone to help us to kind of give it that third party feel, and she went around and sat down and talked with just about everybody, most all the managers and a lot of the staff, and asked them those questions. How do you use your space? Does the space meet your needs? What would you change about your space? And really tried to understand if we were delivering what our customers needed.
Excellent,
Yeah.
excellent. You have a distinct, I don't know if it's an advantage, but you can add a lot of value too, because we've talked, you've came up through the trades.
Yeah, that's right. I actually started, I went to vocational school instead of high school, or it was my high school, as an electrician. I joined the Navy as an electrician right out of high school. Did that, returned from the service, started working in the IBW in Boston, Local 103. Worked for the contractor there.
I was part of 103 for a while too.
Oh yeah, it's
Yeah.
great. They have probably one of the best apprenticeship programs in the country. They really do teach great fundamentals, and some of the best electricians you can work with come out of that school.
Definitely.
I happen to be working at Harvard University as a subcontractor for another contractor, and someone approached me and asked me if I'd be interested in maybe coming on board to work in the high voltage department that they had here. And I was doing electrical testing and maintenance, so basically PM programs on switchgear, transformers, circuit breakers, that kind of thing. And I had a young family just starting out. The Local 103 is great. The testing industry is great, but it's very, very busy. You work a lot of hours, a lot of weekends, a lot of nights, which can be pretty stressful on a young family. So I kind of jumped at the opportunity to come in-house and work at Harvard. It was great. So I started out in the electrical distribution department as a foreman. Started taking classes at night through the Harvard Extension program, which is another great program and a great benefit of working at Harvard. The classes are free. You pay an administrative fee, which is pretty small. It was $30 at the time. I think it's gone up a little bit. You pay for your own books, but other than that, just keep going. Went to classes.
Could you expand a little more? Like what exactly is the Harvard Extension program, and how does one take advantage of that or get engaged with it?
Yeah, so the Harvard Extension School is open to everyone. So it's online and in-person college degree program that is operated by Harvard University. It is a separate from Harvard College. And so, yeah, anyone can attend. And while I was there, we would have classes. There would be senior citizens, there would be working adults, there would be high school students who were earning college credits to get ready for college. It was a real variety of students. Harvard University, as a benefit for its employees, allows or basically pays your tuition once you're a qualified employee. So
That's a
yeah,
hell of a benefit. That's fantastic.
it is. It's great. And classes are mostly at night. They have summer school classes. Sometimes classes can be on the weekend. They have in-person and online classes. I'm a little older, so there wasn't too many online classes in my day. But yeah, it was a really great program. Learned a lot, and I think I learned a lot from the other students as well. It's such a real diverse student body. In many classroom settings, they talk about diversity as in, ethnicity, point of view, or something like that. But at the extension school, your diversity comes not just from that, but it comes from age, years of experience, people from all over the world. Some people are taking classes for fun. Some people are taking classes to better their careers. And so everybody's kind of coming at it from a different perspective. And a lot of students can really add a lot to a class, especially you're in a class discussing project management and the former CEO of a Fortune 500 company is actually in the class, and giving relevant experience, and sharing that with everyone else. It's pretty interesting.
That's great. Appreciate you sharing all that. Now, would you say most people do take advantage of it? Most people who are working at Harvard?
You know, it's there is a percentage, and I don't want to cite any of those because the Department of Continuing Education will probably want to correct me. But there is a percentage of people that come and work for Harvard just for the benefit. Right? That's the only reason they're coming to work for the benefit, and as a way to go to college and get a graduate degree, an undergraduate degree, for relatively inexpensive. And then there are the folks that are here that are particularly in the trades. I found that don't really take advantage of the program. It's not, I don't think, as well taken advantage of as it could be. I always encouraged people when I started going. I loved it. I always encouraged everyone I worked with or worked for me to try it. And sometimes you get folks to try a class or two, and sometimes people would go on to get a degree. It really differed. But I used to explain to people that at some point in time when they were negotiating your union contract, someone said, "We'll give you free classes instead of giving you $1 an hour." Somewhere along the line, I don't know when it was, but every time you don't take those free classes, you're leaving that benefit that was negotiated for you on the table and not taking advantage of it.
Hey, rock stars. If you're tuning into the podcast and are feeling overwhelmed by all the maintenance demands at your facility, don't stress. We've got you covered. Our sponsor, Coludis, is your go-to partner to help you tackle all those demands and get them done right, on time, and with top-notch quality. From project planning to execution, Coludis is there to make hard work easy. Visit coludis.com today to get started. Great explanation and perspective on that. Love that. I don't know if I broke your stride. I know you were walking us through, your trade progression and whatnot, and I just honed in on the school there. Was there anything more you wanted
no, I
to...
mean, that's when, when I started taking the classes, eventually I did get my bachelor's degree. And that's when I kind of made the leap from hourly union employee into management. I felt like, I wanted to do a little more. The best way to grow and opportunity was to leave the trades and get into management. And that's where I started the Harvard Fire Safety Group. I became the supervisor of that group. Eventually then kept taking classes, earned my master's degree, wanted to do a little bit more and use that degree. And I went over to Harvard Medical School and that's where I first really got into facilities as a specific, and I became the senior facility manager for the New England Primate Center, which is an affiliate of Harvard University. And it's that's where it all began.
Nice journey.
Yeah.
Impressive journey.
Yeah, it was a lot of work. Have to thank my wife and my kids for, being so supportive. It, probably wasn't easy. And I know my wife's told me it wasn't easy, for me to be gone all day and then come home and eat dinner and lock myself away to read for 2 or 3 hours or to do some homework. There were nights when I was off at class, when things were happening at home and I couldn't be there for one thing or another. And so she had to always pick up a lot of that extra slack. So it was really important that I had such a supportive family.
That's outstanding. I wanted to touch on before we do, actually, the Harvard Fire Safety Group. You might have touched on it earlier, but could you say a little bit more about that?
So Harvard University is a decentralized system. So most everything at Harvard is kind of within the schools or the departments. So Harvard Law School kind of does its own thing. The business school, Harvard College, they all do their own thing. There's very little that's centralized in that kind of space, especially from facilities point of view. But Harvard Campus Services operates some groups, the facilities maintenance group and the fire safety group, that are fee-for-service centralized groups. So the fire safety group operates all the fire alarm systems for the most part on the university. So we have guys that go out and test fire alarm systems on a daily basis. So there's probably about 400 accounts, I think now. It's been a couple of years and the university is always growing, but probably at least about 400 different accounts that they're servicing. And they got to go out and they have to be tested every year. There's sprinkler systems that have to be tested. There's generators, automatic transfer switches. So this group is in charge of basically implementing that PM program. And that's where I really got into PM programs. It's a huge PM program and most of it, the AHJ is dictating, how much, PM and inspections you have to do and how often. So yeah, that was really insightful, or it was actually, it was a great part of my career to be involved with that because I really got to understand that part of it. So yeah, they're out there every day and they're also repairing the fire alarms. They're responding to troubles. They're responding to fires, not as the first responders in putting out the fire, but they meet with the fire department. They help the fire department interface with the fire alarm system. Not every fireman is really great at pushing all those little buttons. So they can go in, they can help the fireman understand where the fire was, what device activated it, when it happened, why, and help them make sense of what's going on.
Sounds very comprehensive.
It's a great team. It's a real asset to the university.
Excellent. So now I want to jump to your management style, because I remember we had a really good conversation about this a while back, and then you also have a story about one of our previous U.S. presidents, which I thought it was a fantastic story. If you could kind of talk about your management style and maybe share that story with us, John.
Yeah. So one thing I always believed in is, the need to engage with everyone. So in facilities, you engage with your customers. I think we talked about that earlier, asking them, how does the building work for you? Are we meeting your needs? But also engaging with your staff, the electricians, the plumbers, the custodians, the food service workers, asking them how they're doing, just saying hello, just kind of taking a moment to just connect with people on a human basis. And I guess the story I told you was it's an experience I had when I was in the Navy, and it really exemplified this for me. Was I worked at Camp David very briefly. It was right after the first Gulf War. We were sent to remove some emergency generators that had been installed to kind of up the communication systems during the war. And President Bush was there, the father. Anyway, when I got there, I ended up running into an old friend who's an electrician who was permanently assigned to Camp David, and we were talking, and he took us around, gave us a tour. We were chatting, and he told me about this wonderful experience he had. And because I asked him, how's it working for the president? Do you ever get to meet him? And he says, yeah, I really did get to meet him once. He said one day it was a Saturday, and it was his extra duty. He had to act as the lifeguard for the Bush grandchildren. So, everybody has their job, electrician, but you have your other job, I guess, lifeguard. And it was a hot
For the
day, and
president's grandchildren.
yeah, it was a hot day, I guess, and the kids were, they ran out and they jumped into the pool. But as kids will be, right? They in there for a few minutes, and then something, distracted them, and they were off running in the woods, playing hide and go seek or whatever they were doing. And he had to continue to sit out there in the sun all by himself with no kids to watch over. He said after a while he was sitting there, and he kind of heard a whisper of "Psst, hey," and looked over, and out of the back of the house was President Bush, and he waved him on in. He said, "Come here, come here," and he invited him in the house. He asked him to sit down. He said, "Would you like a beer?" And of course he said yes, and he went to the refrigerator, got a couple of beers. They sat down on the couch together. He proceeded to ask my friend Mitch, questions. Where are you from? Are you married? Aren't you married? Do you have kids? Just basic stuff, just engaging with him as a person. They chatted for a while. They finished most of their beer. And at one point, President Bush said, well, I guess I have to get back to work, and so do you. And gave him, showed him the door, and he went back out and sat in his chair, and the president went back to whatever presidents do. And I thought that was great, and it really made his career, I think, having that interaction with the president in such a personal way.
What a great story of like really great humanity and, having genuine interest in someone. The president didn't need to do that. That's wonderful. It's wonderful.
Yeah, I've
Good lesson
always
for all of
had a
us.
lot of respect for President Bush after that story, especially.
And thank you for your service too.
Oh, you're welcome.
So we've learned a ton. You've shared a lot with us, John. Thank you for that, especially the president's story. Is there anything that we may have missed along this journey of your career and your experience? Because there's a lot you have to offer, and I don't want to miss anything here.
It's I've been very fortunate that I've been able to work in a real variety of settings. Early in my career, I worked in utilities, underground, high voltage distribution, moving off into life safety, emergency generators, power systems, fire alarm systems, sprinkler systems, not necessarily as the guy that was turning the wrench, but I really got to learn a lot about, how these things work, their importance. And eventually I moved on to the primate center, and that was a whole different world. Working in a vivarium with animals, in research and laboratory people, and all that comes with it, with the regulations. Again, just really opened my eyes. School of Public Health, I did a little time there, which is very similar to the primate center. And now I'm here at the Harvard Art Museums, and we have billions of dollars worth of priceless artworks that are either on the walls or in storage. It's a really big responsibility to make sure that these things are safe, that they're in the right environment. It's kind of, one of my customers is a Monet, one of my customers is a Van Gogh, right? And they need to be treated the right way, humidity, temperature. So it's a big responsibility, but it's been a great journey, and I don't regret it. I don't think I was talking to someone else, I never expected. I mean, there's no way you could have asked the 18-year-old me that was packing my duffel bag to go off to boot camp, what I'd be doing 40 years from now. And it's pretty amazing all the places I've been. I've worked all over the world. I've worked in caves in Norway and mountaintops in Italy. I've worked on tropical beaches, Guantanamo Bay, Cuba. Um, again, worked a lot of great places with a lot of great people and just have so many wonderful experiences. I'm very happy and very blessed.
God, what you must have seen throughout that whole journey. So we went from primates in a vivarium to Monet, and I say it that way because here's a question, John. What's been your biggest challenge, right, throughout? It could be in any facet of this journey of yours, and how did you overcome it? What advice would you give?
Well, I'd say one thing just when you kind of say, vivariums to Monet, the one thing I've always tried to do is make the connection, right? So what's the connection from A to B? But when you look at laboratory settings and you look at the art museum, it's not that different. Um, you know, in fact, the museum is a laboratory. We have the Strauss Center for Conservation, where they conserve artwork, and there's the same kind of chemicals, the same kind of fume hoods, the same kind of processes that they're using for conservation as they're using for research in a laboratory. So you kind of try and make those connections, and that helps you kind of move from one to the other. There's still a ton to find out, but for me, the biggest challenge has always and will always be the kind of human resources aspect. It's always difficult, at least for me, the hiring and firing and the discipline and trying to manage all the different personalities that you encounter. Trying to understand that not everyone's like you, not everyone has the same experience as you, trying to look at things from other people's point of view, but at the same time, trying to get the best and the most out of people.
So, any advice on that? Because that is an extremely, it's something we all face, right? The HR, managing, leading, relating to those unlike us. Any best
Yeah,
practice or anything you could offer
maybe
there?
it's a little timely with what we see in the newspaper nowadays. And in fact, I was just talking this morning with one of the guys from the Harvard Fire Group who I hired 17 odd years ago. And we were talking about some of the different supervisors that had been there before me, after me, and me. And, my advice would be when you come into a new place, there's so much usually wrong, right? At least, you go in and maybe there's discipline issues, maybe people aren't up to performance standards, and is this want need to take a sledgehammer or an axe and kind of put a stop to it right now. I find that, taking small bites of the apple works best for me. In other words, not coming in with big pronouncements and big changes, but trying to identify important things and change that thing, and
Mm.
then find something else and change that thing. And then soon you're changing the culture. And then you build to it. So you have to have patience. It takes time. Um, but I think for me, it's always worked better to take a slow approach to kind of changing the culture of an organization than it is to try and do it overnight.
Very sound advice. Through our discussion today, John, you have shared a lot of personal, and thank you for that. Like, the challenge with family and the long hours when your family was younger and you were as well. And anything more on you? Like, what does John do outside of all of this?
Um, well, right now, my wife and I we bought a second home in Newport, Rhode Island, a few years ago. And so that's kind of our big focus. We spend a lot of time down there. It's a wonderful place. I have a daughter who actually lives there, so we get to see her quite a bit. I have another daughter who lives up in Maine, so we don't get to see her quite as often. But yeah, Newport's great. We love Newport. I like to bike, kind of road biking. So I have a lot of friends down there that are also doing it, and we kind of have a little informal club, and we meet on the weekends and go out for long rides. And so, yeah, that's pretty much it for right now.
That sounds pretty exciting to me. Newport's gorgeous.
Yeah, it's a beautiful place. So we enjoy it.
Excellent. John, I cannot thank you enough for being on the show. Before we close out, though, if people have questions about anything you've discussed or something more, how would you recommend they get in touch with you?
Sure, they can always send me an email, John, JOHN _ Boucher, BOUCHER at harvard.edu. And yeah, happy to chat. I'm also on LinkedIn if people want to connect. Yeah, happy to chat.
Outstanding. Thank you very, very much for being on the show today. It was an absolute pleasure speaking with you again. And thanks for sharing all of your knowledge and experience with all of us.
Well, Jay, thank you very much for having me. It was a great experience, and I encourage anyone else who's out there in the facilities world to connect with Jay and maybe come on as a guest and share your experiences.
Yeah, thanks, John. Thank you. Feelings mutual. And everyone out there listening, thank you for tuning in. If you learned something or if you want to connect with John, please do so. And if you liked it, tell someone else about the show. So another great episode, and we'll see everyone next time.
It's a wrap. Another episode of Facility Rockstars is in the books. Facility Rockstars is sponsored by Colutus, operating the way you operate in order to make your life easier. Until next time, facilitate and rock on.